Welcome to the Bourbon Friday show, where every Friday we take a short break, try a new bourbon, and meet someone awesome from the St. Louis startup scene. I'm your host, Nick Niehaus, and today I am interviewing Matt Meneitti, who's the executive director of GlobalHack. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so first question I guess I have for you is GlobalHack is a hackathon, right? So what is a hackathon?
So just to kind of back up a little bit, GlobalHack, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We run hackathons, but we also offer accessible coding opportunities for middle high school.
So it's more than just the hackathon.
So we started with running these software competitions, and then we started to notice by inviting the different high school students and youth involved that not everybody had an equitable access to a summer camp class or a middle school class. So we decided to do something about that and launch a series of different programs that would address that. So we have middle school programs, high school programs. But in terms of hackathons, if you haven't been to a hackathon, it's basically like an invention marathon where people are building really cool software projects over the course of a weekend. So we provide teams of technologists with a kind of a shared or a common problem for them to solve over the course of that weekend. And they have anywhere from typically 36 to 48 hours to come up with a software solution, a prototype that will address that particular problem.
Wow, okay. So, yeah, I mean, being a member here at T-Rex, I've seen a few of these happen on weekends over the course of the past few years. So they seem pretty intense. I haven't actually participated in one myself, but so you're saying that, we're coming up with a solution over the course of just a single weekend. So, I mean, are these actually like fully fleshed out products at that point, or are they ideas, or kind of how far does this get in just that 36 hours?
Yeah, you'd be surprised by, the amount of there's just an intense amount of focus and energy that goes into building these projects. And so it's kind of, I would say anywhere between, a general concept and a full-fledged product. So we're looking at, these are prototypes. They're not intended to be, commercially viable or ready to be used, but you're able to, hack together a quick solution in 36 hours. So we don't actually look for, PowerPoints or this is what I would do. So we're looking for viable code, but we know that it's not going to be perfect, right? We know that a lot of it is just going to be built super quick, kind of hackathon quality, but that's not really the entire point. The point is just to get a solution out there, kind of see what sticks, and then from there, make some determinations as to what were the best projects.
Cool. All right. So going back a little bit in terms of historically speaking, how long has the idea of a hackathon kind of been a thing, obviously? Because was this something that preceded, software, or is this a relatively new phenomenon?
That's a great question. I honestly don't know the answer about the origins of a hackathon. I just remember, I think the first time I heard about it was I was watching The Social Network. It's kind of like the...
it's true. I remember that scene.
The scene where we don't encourage drinking or allow drinking at our hackathons, but it's basically like scene with Mark Zuckerberg, and he's like, whoever can build this piece of software, and you have to take a shot, and I have to take a shot, and he basically hires developers on the spot with that method. It's not what we do, but the idea is you're building software relatively rapidly, and quickly over a short amount of time.
Sure. Yeah. So let's look at the past. So this has been around GlobalHack for a few years now, right? Maybe tell us about the first one. What was the objective? What was kind of the challenge of the first one? And did any of those turn into viable projects, or what's kind of happened since then? Yeah,
so the first one was held back in 2014, I believe is winter of that time. And I wasn't working full-time as the executive director then. I was a volunteer. Gabe Lozano, Travis Sheridan, and Drew Winship, all really active members in the St. Louis startup community, were getting GlobalHack started, and they're running this first event, and it was at Union Station downtown, and they had partnered with a local company actually that was working and got it started out of T-Rex called Top Ops. Top Ops is a sales organization, and so for them, the reason they decided to partner and ultimately put up the prize money was first and foremost from a kind of recruitment standpoint. This is a great way for them to find potential technologists and developers who are going to work on their team. Because at that point they were, starting to hire and thinking about, how are we going to get our tech team? And so recruitment is one of the main reasons we end up bringing a lot of corporate and private companies who want to sponsor the hackathon because they want to be able to build a relationship with the community we have there. And so the project was really to take a look at like a sales algorithm that they had to kind of score potential deals
Okay.
within the top-off software. So
they almost kind of designed the purpose of the hackathon then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Very much for them in a sense.
Yeah, it was. And it was really great. I was only there, during, I think, check-in on a Friday there to assist with that. Didn't really get to take a look at the final projects, but I know that there was a lot of, even halfway through it, they were getting such good response from the teams that they decided to add an additional prize as an additional incentive. So,
oh, really? Wow.
For them, it was a great kind of kickstart and jumpstart for them, and they were able to hire a number of different developers from the hackathon itself.
Wow.
They found their CTO,
oh, really? Okay.
their CTO there, and then they were able to get an excellent product out of it too. So that may have, I don't know if that particular feature set or that product is still alive and growing today, but it at least gave them a lot to think about to say, hey, maybe this is something we should incorporate into our product, into our business.
Yeah, so it sounds like a kind of a jump start for them in a significant way.
Totally.
Cool. So it sounds like the mission of GlobalHack has really evolved since then, right? Because I know you said it's the hackathon, but now there's a lot of additional programs. So what kind of defined the mission for us? I mean, what are you guys trying to accomplish with GlobalHack?
Yeah, the big picture is about driving social impact through technology.
Okay.
And it's a particular, it's a big passion of mine to figure out, we know technology is changing every industry, right? Everything from marketing to bourbon to hospitality to everything. It's not a matter of if, it's when it'll affect these industries. And so I think that since we know that change is coming and has already occurred, it's like, well, how is it affecting not-for-profits? How is it affecting the world of education? Mm-hmm. And so how can we use this tool for good? And so I think that's the kind of the umbrella in which our programs fall under. So we did, the first 4 hackathons that we ran were really focused on partnering with a single organization, typically a corporation or a for-profit company. But after that, after we were able to prove the model that St. Louis could support a hackathon organization and we could raise enough money and that there were participants and there was a need. It was basically like supply and demand, right? We were able to put on the events and people were going to come. We reevaluated and said, what problems do we end up working on long term? And we said, well, wouldn't it be great to be able to, these problems that, in the corporate world and the other startups, they have access to resources that civic organizations and nonprofits don't. Sure. So as a nonprofit ourselves, we reevaluated and said, I think it would be more compelling, not just for our participants, but I think for the community at large, we could drive more impact by working on these projects because no one's getting rich building technology that are going to help the homeless. No one's getting rich building technology that's going to make information more accessible for mass incarceration. So those were, we decided to refocus take a look at what types of problems we wanted to focus on, and that's where we landed. And then the education programs, again, I kind of alluded to it before, really evolved out of a need to engage more youth in our work and identify where were those gaps in terms of what schools and what communities were not being served in terms of access to technology. And so, you can go to basically any report around workforce in the St. Louis community or nationally, and tech jobs are number one by a long shot. Sure. And we need to start really early. We believe as early as elementary and middle school for some of these interventions, just to get kids starting to think about this. This could be something that I could do long term. Okay. And it starts with a camp, and we know that's only part of the solution. But if we can get a student to get them to open their eyes because they had an amazing camp experience, and we've got a number of different great stories from parents and teachers who email us and were like, Sally had a great opportunity at camp, and thank you so much. And now she's asking me nonstop to I want more, right?
Wow,
I want to learn more code.
Yeah. So is that mostly about just exposing these kids to this? I mean, because I'm assuming this is something they're not getting in school at all, or is this building off of something that they're already experiencing?
It depends on the school. Obviously, more affluent districts are going to have access to more resources and things like robotics clubs, and they will have, another major barrier is just teachers, right? I think a lot of times it falls on a math or science teacher or, maybe a librarian, an engaged parent. And if they don't have that type of capacity, it's really, coding is really treated as as a kind of a it's a nice to have thing. It's not a requirement.
Bonus. Yeah.
So there are some things, policy wise that are going through in Jeff City, kind of in our state government, that would make it easier and more attractive for students to take computer science. But we feel like organizations like GlobalHack and others are particularly needed right now, and that there isn't a lot of availability, and that I think it's nationally less than a quarter of our schools are offering any sort of coding class or program.
Oh, really? At all?
At all, right.
Wow.
And so that's a pretty shocking statistics when you consider that, you look at the number of available jobs, and you look at just the way that the world of work is changing to be more, focused on digital skills. And you're like, well, we know that students, they're still getting chemistry and biology and all these things that we know, or at least think were important. But they need, are we properly preparing them for a world of work that's changing each and every day? I think the education system really hasn't caught up fully to say, like, hey, we need to take a look at what's being offered between, school hours, and saying, how do we best prepare kids for careers?
Yeah, we put in the right focus on the right things.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of things that can be updated about our school system at this point, probably.
And it's a slow moving machine, and it's not to say, I'm not an expert in education, but just some observations that we've had in working with schools is that, like, it's difficult to change things. I think some of that is very much intentional, but if we can build a relationship with a teacher, parent, or principal, a lot of them get it. A lot of them understand that, like, they hear all the time, whether it's an article they read or from a parent who said, we want to be able to provide or run a coding club at our particular library branch, or our youth organization. It's easy to make the argument, and hopefully that we can provide them with that service by partnering directly with them.
Cool. So are you guys looking to kind of push the schools to offering their own programs in the long term, or are you kind of bringing this stuff to them yourselves? I mean, what's kind of the model there?
Right now, like, the way that we deliver services is through, we have a couple different programs. We have one that's more beginner friendly called CS First.
Okay.
CS First is a curriculum that is built by Google, which is great. So they provide all the curriculum. It's all web-based, so it's updated in real time, and we know it's vetted and aligns with some educational standards. So some educators have gotten together and to say, this is what needs to be taught around computer programming at what's age appropriate. Okay. What do they need to learn? So we know that it's been vetted, and we know it works. And so we the way that works is we partner directly with either middle schools or organizations that work with middle school students. So, like, Boys and Girls Club, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, YMCA, those types of organizations. And it's an 8-week program where we actually will vet, hire, and then train instructors to go out to the sites and work directly with those organizations. And then we have another program called the Youth Coding League, which is a similar, also serves middle school, but a little bit more competitive. The students are actually learning Python, and so it's more of a fun kind of competitive environment, but still very much focused on learning and exposure.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah. So once somebody has gotten started in these programs, I mean, are you guys going to continue building out follow-on programs, or are there other things they should kind of graduate into, perhaps?
Yeah, we're having that conversation now about what comes next. I think part of it is that our youth programs have been around since 2016, so we have some data to go off of to know, are we building students' interest? Are we building their confidence?
Sure.
Are they learning the skills that we intended them to learn in that particular program? And so I think part of it is, the more programs we go through, the more iterations, the stronger that particular offering will be. And I think part of it is taking a look at the landscape for some of the other youth organizations and some of the other educators to figure out what does it take to get what does it take to get a student to be exposed and inspired, and then after that you need to kind of have to stoke that, right? It's a fire that's quick, it's easily extinguishable.
I bet,
because there's other things that will come and other camps and things like that. So something that looking at pathways, if the end goal is to get a student in an internship or eventually in an undergraduate degree in computer science, how do we chart that path for them?
Okay.
So I think that's still a question very much we're looking to answer not just alone, but with other community partners who are interested in that work. But it's something we're thinking about.
Cool. All right. Well, tell me a little bit about your background. Because obviously, how does somebody end up being the executive director of a hackathon? I know you worked in venture capital for a while, right? Tell us about what got you here.
Yeah. So I'm a St. Louis transplant,
okay.
Originally from Iowa City, Iowa. So I noticed you had Cedar Ridge here, which is one of my favorite bourbons. So I appreciate the Iowa nod.
Eric always does a great job picking the bourbon. So.
Proud Iowan. I actually moved here from Iowa City back in May of 2009 after I graduated, and decided that I had a degree in electrical engineering, but I have always been really interested in working in the nonprofit sector, doing something that makes a difference. And so I heard about this program called AmeriCorps, and so I had other friends that were doing these kind of gap year programs that wanted to take a year off, between college and the real world to do something a little different. So I did that. I did that for a year and moved to St. Louis and fell in love with the city. I ended up working with a great after-school program, doing some marketing and development for them, and got to meet a great community, just fell in love with the city and decided to stick around. So I did a leadership program after that called Oro, which gave me a number of different great connections and skills, and then eventually made my way into the venture capital and kind of startup community. So I was part of Capital Innovators when that was getting off the ground. So Capital Innovators was really the first accelerator program that was kind of built in St. Louis. This was before Arch Grants. This is before Cultivation Capital, before GlobalHack. So, the tech community at that point had really started to really congeal around some things, and T-Rex and Capital Innovators were a big part of that. So we were actually in the old T-Rex building down on Olive. So Capital Innovators and T-Rex, got together and said, hey, this is a partnership that makes sense because, you can at least provide the incubator with some consistent companies. Like we invested in 10 companies a year, 5 per cohort, and provided them with $50,000 in cash, mentorship. So my job at Capital Innovators and subsequently at the next accelerator I worked with at 630 was to really, recruit. So like find interesting and investable companies, and then from a kind of value add, figure out what resources they needed during the program. So it could have been, do we want to do pitch practice? Do we want to look at pricing, figure out what are they doing about pricing and business model, different speakers, connections to marketers, legal groups, things that could really accelerate the trajectory of the company much faster than they would be on their own. So I love working with entrepreneurs and different founders and kind of kicking around how they're thinking about their business and how they're positioned. So I did that for a couple of years, and then just through different connections in the St. Louis startup community, that's how I met all the founders of GlobalHack. And Capital Innovators, we invested in Locker Dome, Gabe's company, and we invested in Juristat, Drew's company, and then I just met Travis through his work. I think he was at the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership at the time, and then moved on to Venture Cafe. So it's just one of those things where they had really looked to me as like someone I was running Startup Weekend at the time, another hackathon organization, and hey, you seem like someone who's got a lot of passion for this type of work, but you also know how to run a hackathon. So I was grateful for the opportunity and grateful each and every day for the work I get to do and the team that I get to work with.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's get the details. So for anybody that's out there and they want to participate, maybe can they still sign up for it? And when is it? And how do they participate? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So some more info about the hackathon. So GlobalHack 7. This will be our 7th hackathon. This will be a fantastic event. We're going to be at St. Louis University again at Chaffetz Arena. So this is the second time we've been there.
That's pretty big, huh? Like how many people are we talking?
Anywhere from like 700 to 1,000.
Wow.
So a lot of hackers that are joining us. So St. Louis University is our title sponsor. So, we're really thankful for them to provide us with a great space to hack. And then, obviously, from a sponsorship perspective, they've been a tremendous partner for us. So it'll be at SLU, October 12th to 14th. So it's that Friday. We'll kick off at Friday around 6 o'clock. and then go to Sunday and, wrap things up around 4 p.m. there. In terms of what teams are going to be working on, it's a really relevant and really necessary cause. We're going to be working on foreign-born issues, looking at internationally immigrants and refugee causes. So there's a lot of discussion about that in the national media, and we felt it was time for us to start working and you start listening to some of the community partners who are doing fantastic work on the ground in St. Louis, who are trying to figure out how do we improve the lives of our community and the lives of our clients each and every day. So that we're really excited to start to this conversation started 18 months ago when we're thinking about what do we want to work on, what kind of projects, what things interest us, and ultimately what do we think, what are pain points, what are some interesting problems. So that's what teams are going to be working on. They don't know what the actual projects are going to be or the challenges will be until that Friday. So we keep that.
Oh, really? Okay. So they can't prepare and.
Yeah, we want new code, all fresh code.
Yeah,
so we don't want them to get a fresh start. But in terms of who can participate, it's really anybody with an interest in technology. Ultimately, you do have to have someone on your team that can develop software.
Okay, sure.
But in terms of graphic designers, UI, UX, project managers, subject matter experts, all of them are invited to participate.
Oh, really? Okay.
And also a variety of ages. So anybody from high school to, a working professional can sign up, and we have different kind of prize categories or divisions for each. So if if you're in high school, you compete against other high school students in college. So that's the actual event. One of the new things that we're adding this year, particularly to get more youth interested in coding with us, is that we heard a lot from teachers and educators who were like, I'd love to send a group of my students to go participate, but GlobalHack is kind of like the World Series of hackathons. It's a little intimidating for them, and they may not be ready. They don't know what it's 36 hours and it's a lot of work, and maybe they have something going on Saturday, like a soccer game. So we heard that feedback and we said, what's a more kind of digestible way for them to get involved and kind of get a taste of what a hackathon is like without having to devote the 3 days. So we do have a design challenge event. Design challenge is basically like a watered down hackathon. We provide the students with a challenge they're going to be working on that day, and then they work in teams with mentors to kind of guide them through the software development process, but they don't need to know any code. It's all code, no code. They build simple wireframe prototypes that they then present to a panel of judges, and it's all done in a day. It's a really fun event. The kids love it, and we have prizes and different incentives for them to do. We try to make it fun for them. So that'll be at Harris Stowe across the street. So those students will come, they'll have an opportunity to check out the big hackathon too, and kind of say, wow,
see what's next.
See what's next. You'll graduate eventually. The idea is that hopefully they'll use that as a spark and maybe sign up for one of our programs or take an online class. Then eventually that they can kind of work their way up to that youth division, get some experience there. So there's a lot going on, but tickets are still available. Check them out on our website, globalhack.org.
Okay.
Ticket prices are going to go up at the end of the month by $10. So we really encourage people to sign up before then. But we'd love to have you come hack with us.
Cool. And final question on it. If somebody is not participating, is there a part like at the end where the presentations happen that they can also attend, or is it all just the participants for the weekend?
Yeah, they can. Hey, Walter, got another guest. He's on next. So on Sunday, we do have, you can go online and get a guest ticket.
Okay.
So the guest ticket will get you in on Sunday. And the way that we've done judging has switched up. It used to be kind of a very, insular kind of closed off process, and you go to a room and pitch. And there's some element of that, but we want it to be more kind of community minded and more transparent. So we do have the first round of judging is all science fair style. It's kind of like an expo. The projects are set up in a big line, and we have the judging process will still take place during that point. But if you're someone who's just interested in seeing what people built, stop by on Sunday. I don't have the times off the top of my head, but it's in that Sunday morning.
Sure. And
you can sign up for a guest ticket and just come by and talk to the team. Say I'm interested in what you built, how you built it, and but I think people will be pretty blown away by what these teams can come up with in that short amount of time.
Very cool. All right. Well, I'm excited for it. So thanks for sharing all that with us.
Yeah, you bet.
We got one last segment, of course, and that's to invite Eric onto the show, the founder of Bourbon Friday himself. So Eric, welcome. What are we drinking on today?
we're drinking Cedar Ridge Iowa Bourbon whiskey, and
we're spilling it.
And I think you got a little bit of a preview there. And the reason this is on the show is like Matt, I too am a proud Iowan living in St. Louis, right? So Cedar Ridge is in Swisher, which is in the same county as Iowa City, right?
Yeah. You guys at Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So so it's sort of like halfway towards Cedar Rapids.
Okay.
So yeah, and another thing I thought about this was, like, Cedar Ridge is an award-winning bourbon. You don't necessarily think Iowa bourbon, but you do think Iowa corn. They produce the most corn of anybody.
Right.
And the farm, this actually, all of the corn that goes into that bourbon is grown on their farm, that family farm. Right.
Yeah.
So it just kind of goes to show, like, to compete, you don't necessarily have to be the biggest or the best. You just have to have a good, innovative idea and be able to do your own thing in the right way.
Yeah. Great.
Very nice. Wow. Well tied in, as always.
Yeah, that's great.
Very nicely done.
Where in Iowa are you from?
Fort Madison.
Fort Madison,
Yeah.
okay.
So, like, you no longer have to go through it to come back down to St. Louis. but yeah, now that the bypass is.
Yeah, exactly. Very cool.
Cool.
Well, thanks.
Well, last question for you, Eric, is we obviously talk about the Bourbon Friday event every week because we're here at it. Do you want to kind of tell our guests a little bit about the weekly event here at T-Rex?
Sure. So Bourbon Friday happens every week from 4 to 7. It's a bunch of people, a lot of T-Rex people, different startups. There's Arch Grants winners here. There's usually VCs here. There's EDs of nonprofits here. So we do the show every week from about 4:30 to 5. You're welcome to come out and join us. The first step of that, why don't you go out and like the Facebook page, and that's facebook.com/Bourbon Friday, and we'll get in touch with you on how to sign up.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Matt, for joining us
bet.
today. Really
Thanks for having
appreciate
me.
it. As Eric said, we do this every Friday from 4:30 to 5 down here at T-Rex. So we do want to thank T-Rex. We'd also like to thank EQ for streaming the show for us every single week. And finally, I'd like to thank my business partner, Vanessa Lobo, for always producing the show for us. So thanks for tuning in. Check it out again next week, and we'll talk to you then.